Welcome to Let's Talk About It Live, where we deep dive into the conversations women should be having about their hormones, but often don't. Joining me for this important conversation is founder of Healthy Home, Dr. Amber Grasse.
Hi, Lindy. So great to be here today.
So great to see you, Amber. We're always grateful that you're on these calls and you're just glowing today. So I'm so excited for our conversation.
Me too. Me too.
If you don't know Amber, she has a doctorate in energy psychology or a PhD in energy psychology, and she is certified in hormone health. So her background is really invaluable to these discussions. If you've missed previous episodes, you can go back on Healthy Home's YouTube channel and catch up. This is now our 10th episode. We've covered everything from the basics of menopause to andropause to sexual health. So many good episodes in there. Go back and watch. Today, we're going to start back at the beginning. So, we're diving right in with a question about when we're born, we have a set number of eggs. And how does that number of eggs after we're born decrease over time, eventually leading to menopause?
Yes, such a great question. And I love that I learned this from Barbara Taylor. She's an MD and a huge advocate for women's health. She wrote an incredible book called Menopause. And, she's the one who shared that when we're born, we have all the eggs we're ever going to have. And we've heard that before, right? But we're actually born with approximately 1 million eggs. And so when we go through puberty, you ovulate an egg every single month, and that gives us an opportunity to get it fertilized. But when it doesn't, we get our cycle or our period. And we're going to have a chance to ovulate approximately about 450 eggs in our lifespan. And so people go, what happens to the other eggs? The others shrivel up and get absorbed. And so when you reach a critical number of eggs, and that number is approximately around 1,000, you've gone from 1 million to 1,000 after only using 450 eggs. Your ovaries say it's time to close the warehouse. We don't have enough inventory. We don't have enough eggs to stay in business. And that's when we go into menopause. And so meno means menstrual, right? Our period. And pause means to stop. And this is such an important discussion because I wish we could share this with all the young women that are going to be coming through and into this stage so they would understand what the roles their fertility plays in their lifespan and to be acutely aware of when those cycles come in and stop.
Okay, you touched on puberty, and we've all heard the statement that menopause is puberty in reverse. Can you explain why that is?
Yeah, and it's crazy the similarities, right? So puberty begins in reproduction. And so that's when all our hormones flood in. And puberty is anywhere from age 9 to age 14. And sadly, with all the endocrine disruptors, it's becoming younger and younger. But in menopause, it's the opposite. All the flood of hormones goes away. And so both have these similar symptoms that mirror each other. So one has their period stop, the other has their period end. Both have rapid physical changes, physical changes and symptoms in the body, things like our body shape for both puberty and menopause, our skin changes, mood swings, change of identity. I mean, how many times have we had or heard a girl in puberty and like she just starts to not know who she is because her body's changing rapidly. And the same is happening in menopause. Both need to have an incredible amount of sleep. Women in menopause need more sleep, they need more rest. And if you've ever had a teenager at home, that is their favorite bypass time. And they have disruptions in their growth. So when they're young and they're in puberty, they have rapid bone growth. And we see the decline of bone growth when we go into menopause. Both have difficult family issues. And the reason I say that is people don't realize what the disruption of our hormones in women's bodies do to the family. And you'll hear this, you hear some women after she's like, I breezed through menopause, and everybody in the family's eyes get big and they're like, oh, really? Right? It's a very difficult time. But here's the thing, we prepare young girls for puberty. As a mother who's ever been or had a daughter, who's going through puberty, you can relate because you've been there and you prepare them. You're like, okay, she's got anxiety, she's irritable, she's crying at one moment. Like you understand that rapid influx that's come into your body all at once. And so you have sympathy and empathy. Even with our girlfriends, when they have daughters, we're like, oh, we all understand what's happening. But why are we not preparing women in the world that this is going to happen when they go into menopause? It's going to be the polar opposite, that they are going to have anxiety. They're going to have all these emotions start happening because their hormones go away. And it's really sad that we're not preparing the women of the world. And that's why I'm so proud that we're doing talks like this.
It's so true. They are so important. And, having a teenage daughter myself, I see what she's going through. And I can relate because I'm in that, the age group of leading into menopause and perimenopause. And so I love that you touched on sleep, such an important way to heal and balance your body. So we talked about all these shifts that you're having in your body, all these changes. And I
Yeah.
want to get a little bit deeper and have you walk us through how hormone shifts happen over time and why those shifts lead to symptoms that we experience.
Yeah, I loved being introduced to Jessica Shepard. She is an MD and she wrote an incredible book on menopause called Generation M. And she probably did the best interpretation of what happens in our body with hormones. And I just can't help but share it to everybody because she said, look, hormones are complex messengers. Picture male men or male women, and they're going around delivering messages every day. And they know exactly where they're going. They know exactly what they're doing and where they're supposed to go, just like clockwork. And then one day they don't show up for work anymore. The messages just stop getting delivered. And that disruption is perimenopause. It's when the chemical messengers, which are your hormones, experience body changes. And then the mailmen decide, you know what? I'm just not going to show up to work anymore at all. They've done this job or they've had this contract for 30 plus years, delivering and dropping off an egg at a certain time every month, and they decide to stop. And what happens? The contract's gone, and boom, you're into menopause. And I just was like, the awareness of what is happening, and people can relate to that. We talk about hormones and they're like, I don't even know what you're saying. But when you give a visual like that, it really puts it into perspective. You're like, my male men or women are not delivering my messages anymore. And we talked about that. Like, we have these estrogen and hormone receptors on every organ, and all of our symptoms are the disruption of them no longer showing up for us.
Yes, that visual that you just painted really represents what's happening inside our bodies. Again, it's such a good visual. Now, you mentioned different systems within the body. There's a word called endocrine system that I notice people use a lot when they're talking about hormones. Can you break this down for us? Talk about what endocrine system means and its role it has in our body.
Yes, Lindy, it's funny because we trip up on the word, right? Because everybody hears it and, later they're like, what does that even mean, right? And so women are born with over 50 hormones. It's called a complex endocrine system. And so what does endocrine mean? It comes from the Greek roots. Endo means inside, so picture inside our body, and crine means to secrete. The endocrine system is our body's internal messaging system, and we just talked about, and how they message is they use hormones, those chemical messengers, and they carry signals from one part of our body to another, telling the organs what to do. It helps control our metabolism, our mood, our emotions, our sexual function, our reproduction. It does our wake cycles. It's response to stress and injury, blood sugar, blood pressure, heart rate. It literally regulates and controls every single function in the human body.
It's such an important system. I hear that. Um, so absolutely, those are great tips and feedback. Thanks for breaking that down for us. So with all these changes that are happening, we've talked about a bunch of them. There's one outcome that often happens, and that is inflammation. There's those
Yeah.
mornings where you wake up, your body's a little stiff, it's harder to get out of bed. Talk to us about inflammation and the role that it's playing after menopause or during menopause and why it's becoming such a concern.
Yes, I loved learning this from Dr. Shepard. So she said, when you look at dementia and Alzheimer's and really neurodegenerative diseases, 70% of those cases are women. I just got to pause on that. 70% of those cases are women. And so when you look at that sharp estrogen decline, that is one of, and people don't realize, and it happens in our 50s, but estrogen is one of the best anti inflammatory agents in our body. And so when we lose estrogen, we increase inflammation, and that causes those neurons to have hardened plaques. And that buildup can take up to 30 years to happen. And so that's why you're starting to see women who are having dementia in their 70s and 80s. But that process started back in their 50s. Why? Because their estrogen declined in their 50s. And so we really need to be acutely aware of this. And when you start having conversations with your girlfriend, you start hearing the people in their families that are having these declines, you start to become, wow, I wonder if they ever took, hormones, or did they have any system of support for that? I look at my grandmother and I look at my mother as both examples. My grandmother's 94, my mother's 70. My grandmother got put on hormone therapy at age 50 and was on for 20 years. At 94, her brain is sharp as a tack. She hasn't had any breakages. She has all these beautiful things happening for her body. And then my mom, who thought she was being brave and like, I don't need to take anything, right? And I looked at when I was young, that was in reverence for myself. But now you can see some of the health challenges that are taking place. And so it's just so important that we're sharing this conversation with other women.
That is so true. As always, we appreciate you having this call with us and the insights that you provide. Again, if you have missed previous episodes of Let's Talk About It, please go back and watch them on Healthy Home Global YouTube channel. They are all there, and there's just tons of insights. So, Amber, thank you again for being here with us, and we will see you all next week.
Oh, thank you, Lindy. I look forward to it.